Luke 14. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. There in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on his way.
All right, so they've already gone through this before, even in the book of Luke, where the Pharisees want to complain about Jesus healing on the Sabbath, and he actually gave the same response. So this seems like a repeat or deja vu. So he's at a Pharisee's house, and he's being carefully watched, and this man has abnormal swelling of the body. That seems strange. That doesn't just mean he's fat. There was some kind of disease where he was accumulating fluids or something, I guess.
Then he asked them, "If one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out?" And they had nothing to say. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. "When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, 'Give this person your seat.' Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, 'Friend, move up to a better place.' Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted."
All right, so this is speaking about, I guess, our own desire for glory and pride, which is common. That's a natural thing for us to seek glory. Now, a lot of people say, "Oh, no, I don't want people looking at me. I would never walk down to the front and sit at the prominent places." And that's probably true for a lot of people, but in different situations, I think we all seek our own glory. But we should have a humble attitude all the time in all situations. Not just trying to hide in the back pew of the church because we don't want anybody to see us, or maybe because they don't want to see us get up and leave early or something like that. But anyway, it's just talking about having a humble attitude. And these people were really fighting for the prominent seats and seeking their glory.
Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous."
So this is another lesson in pride and humility. You know, oftentimes people throw or have a banquet, invite the most prominent, wealthy, rich guests so that they can hold some sort of status. That's the main reason why most people would even have a banquet at all, is for a status statement or something. But he says, instead of inviting rich people that can do something for you in return, you ought to do it as a free gift of grace. That's the way God offers salvation. You should offer free food, banquet, party to people who can't pay you back. That way you're doing it for an honorable reason. You're not seeking your own glory or not seeking to be repaid, but you are truly, in humility, offering a gift for free to those who can't pay you back, which is what God does for us.
When one of those at the table with him heard this, he said to Jesus, "Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God."
Well, that fella seems like a smart guy, doesn't he? I don't think there's anything. Jesus didn't really respond to that. But this guy seems to have his head on straight.
Jesus replied, A certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is now ready." But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, "I have just bought a field, and I must go and see it. Please excuse me." Another said, "I have just bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me." Still another said, "I just got married, so I can't come." The servant came back and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and ordered his servant, "Go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame."
So obviously these people that had possessions, had a wife, had wealth, they weren't interested in coming to the banquet. But the poor, the crippled, blind, and the lame would be very thankful. And this is an analogy or a parable talking about how those who think they are well don't need a physician. And those who are forgiven much love much, as we've talked about recently. So this is why many of the Jews rejected Christianity and their own Messiah, because they didn't think they needed forgiveness of sins, or certainly they didn't need a new system of religion. They weren't interested in that at all. But the Gentiles would be thankful to be offered a position, a high position in God's kingdom. And that's why it went to the Gentiles.
"Sir," the servant said, "what you ordered has been done, but there is still room." Then the master told his servant, "Go out to the roads and country lanes and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full. I tell you, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet."
So this is a natural response from human. Like if a human offered or sent out invitations and was rejected, he would be mad. Which, I don't know, in a sense, I have a hard time saying God would ever be mad, even though I know the Bible talks about his wrath and his anger is kindled and things like that. I really feel like those are just like human expressions. I don't believe anything can upset God when he knows the future. He knows what's going to happen. How can it really make him mad when he's also the creator who creates people and makes them the way they are and uses them for his specific purposes? So I don't see him being surprised or mad about anything, but it translates well to our human emotions so that we can understand it when it's said like that.
Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple."
So this is also another example of humility and pride, because he's not really saying you ought to hate yourself. You ought to hate your family and hate yourself. Because, if you want to be a Christian, you really have to love yourself enough to seek after eternal life. But what he's saying is you need to get your priorities straight. You need to, anyone who stands in your way or anyone who is an obstacle for you following Jesus, you need to not be concerned about that. You need to not worry about it. You don't need to try to appease them or prevent, let anything be an excuse for why you wouldn't follow Jesus. Like we just talked about, all these excuses that the Jews had why they wouldn't want to go to the banquet, which I know it didn't say they were Jews, but I'm just assuming that's what it's representing. So, Jesus deliberately said some things maybe a little bit harsher than it really is, for the purpose of, giving the understanding to some and some not being able to understand or not given the ability to understand.
"Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, 'This person began to build and wasn't able to finish.'"
Okay, so that consequence is strange to me. Most people care about what other people think about them. Some people don't care what other people think. So if somebody wanted to build a tower and he's like, whatever, I can only build the foundation now and I'll build the rest 10 years from now and I don't care what anybody else says. It wouldn't really be much of a deterrent, I guess, if someone had that attitude. But in general, most people don't like to be made fun of or ridiculed.
Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation, while the other is still a long way off, and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples.
And again, that's just talking about priorities. You need to be willing to give up everything. I say that even includes your own desire for glory, or your own desire for sovereignty, human sovereignty, or the sovereignty of the human will. You have to completely give up everything. Turn over your life to God and let Him drive. Let Him take you where He wants to go. Let Him be the one who makes decisions and what happens, and even how you handle it. Turning over everything. That's not just talking about money and possessions. It's talking about your inner man completely, your heart. Turn your heart over and your mind over to God and let Him have control of everything. Now, I don't think we have to relinquish control to Him. I think He has it anyway. But oftentimes, in our own minds, we don't think that He has dominion and control. So that's something that you need to give up.
Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. It is thrown out. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear.
All right, so I think that's what he says when he's saying that some of you who hear this are not going to understand it. But some of you who hear this will understand it. So that Jesus knows that the way He said these things is going to cause some people to be confused. And all He's talking about in this whole chapter is being humble instead of prideful, and getting your priorities straight, putting God ahead of yourself, recognizing the sovereignty of God, and surrendering your life to Him.